Greetings, DoD innovators. Happy Women's History Month, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Captain Ashley Hollingsworth, Chief of the Directors Action Group at the Department of Air Force CDAO. As your host, I'm thrilled to be part of this month's Innovation Connect, as always. Before diving into today's topic, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. If you're not a presenter, please keep your camera off and your microphone on mute. If someone has a live microphone while our speaker is presenting, please allow the moderators to mute that microphone. Also, please limit your question to today's topic and avoid media-related inquiries or commercial-like promoting. Finally, your questions for the speaker can be submitted through the chat, and feel free to submit them throughout the presentation. In honor of Women's History Month, today's webinar will feature Ms. Asha Saxena, founder and CEO of Women Leaders in Data and AI, WLDA. As an innovator, leader, author, and change maker, Ms. Saxena has a proven track record of building successful tech businesses for the last 25 years. On top of that, with a strong academic background, creative problem-solving skills, and an effective management style, she has been instrumental in building business models for success. Ms. Saxena has a master's degree in data science and machine learning from Southern Methodist University, Texas, and an undergraduate degree as a computer science engineer from Bangalore University in India. Additionally, she has attended management programs at MIT and London Business School. Ms. Saxena is the founder and the CEO of Women Leaders in Data and AI, WLDA, a global leadership organization bringing senior leaders together with a mission to create an impactful digital world with parity and equity. Ms. Saxena has many talents. She is the best-selling author of The AI Factor: How to Apply Artificial Intelligence and Use Big Data to Grow Your Business Exponentially, a top 100 Amazon bestseller. She is also certified as a Six Sigma Black Belt professional in operational excellence. Ms. Saxena, take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here talking about one of my favorite topic, artificial intelligence, and I feel like the world is talking about it. But also, I'm really proud, as you said, Ashley, to be the founder and CEO of Women Leaders in Data and AI. Now we call it World Leaders Coming Together to Advance this initiative. A really important initiative, and I'll talk about it why this is so important that each one of us become more responsible as we engage or create or develop any kind of data and analytics or AI solution. So I would love to get started and share a little bit more about what I wrote in the book and also how AI is changing our world now much faster than ever before. And it really started from and I tell you, November 30th, 2022 was an important date because OpenAI was launched. Within 5 days, everybody was talking about it. If you remember, kids were coming home and talking about that they could actually converse with for the very first time and be able to get the responses for any question they had. From writing their essays to writing articles or passing exam, ChatGPT was doing it for you. If you remember when we talked about technology, if we went to a social gathering, nobody wanted to talk about tech. And suddenly we were very popular. All the technologists were very popular because they were going into a social gathering and everybody was talking about AI. But AI is not new, right? It's been around for a long time. And in fact, in 1950s, the AI was in 1950s, the whole era started. In 1956, at Dartmouth, artificial intelligence, the term was coined. We've been working with computers for a long time, and we saw the evolution of computers from mainframe to mid frames to client server technologies and developing applications. But really, the power of AI became stronger when big data came. We had the Web 1.0, which was really information on the internet. We were using internet to really read information about companies, people. It was one-way street. The internet was information sharing tool. Web 2.0, when it came, it was bidirectional. It was where we had Facebook, Google started coming up. And these companies did really, really well because they were engaging the consumer in a conversation on the internet. And there was a lot more data that was getting gathered. The more data, the models which live on this data become stronger and stronger. And we saw that the power of transformation within AI models during the pandemic. I mean, think about the amount of people who were on the internet and the amount of data that was getting collected. And in November, when ChatGPT came, the large language model or the generative AI revolution really started. Every single person knew what generative AI was because they could communicate with ChatGPT no matter which country you were in. You could communicate with ChatGPT in a natural language, and you had a machine or a model that could transform that natural language like no one has seen before. Remember, the purpose of technology is to really make our life easier. When we talk about chemical or electronics or mechanical engineering or any kind of nuclear or chemical, uh, the science is here to help solve problem, but also it can create confusion and harm. And I think it's so important that we are fascinated by technology from the very beginning when we were developing fire or wheels or automobiles or electric bulbs. We've used technology to help make our life better. But the question is, can this technology also harm us? And I think that's the question. During the time when ChatGPT came, a lot of the people were talking about, is this technology for good or for bad? And the question about, can AI really hurt us? And I'm going to continue talking about that. And I'm sure when we actually have a conversation, we'll be able to talk about these topics as we continue talking about it. And if you all know, in fiction, our imagination is so strong. In fiction, we actually started imagining what would our world look like, from the movies. If you remember 1968, 2001 Space Odyssey, when the robot in the space took control. And in 2001, the movie AI came out, and it showed the human a robot, which actually started having feeling for the mother. So this was the robot, a child robot, who actually got attached to the human. And the movie Her, I think what a great movie it was, and it made me think, because in the movie Her, the virtual assistant, which was a software, if you've seen that movie, you would recognize with the protagonist here had he's installing the software on his computer, which becomes his companion, and he's engaging with this companion, the virtual assistant, in a way to help write emails, sort out his emails, the daily task, and he lands up sharing a lot of information with this virtual assistant. Uh, and I love showing the clip usually to remind the audience about the impact of software can have on you. I mean, we never really thought. I mean, I remember seeing this movie and I never thought that this would actually that a human can get attached to a software that strongly. I was watching, and I say it's not a fiction any longer because I was watching news CBS, and now there are chatbots which are emotional friends for you. It's an AI friend. And it talked about in the news that you have this application now that you can actually talk, and they're mental health application. They give you companionship and they learn about your behavior. And so if you're talking to the chatbot and you're sharing that you have a headache, the chatbot will ask you, because the friend will ask you, how are you feeling the next day? And will recommend music because understands what kind of music you listen to. So now we have these technologies that are truly creating a difference in our life, from healthcare to education. Um, The technology is really evolving so very fast. And I'm going to spend a little time talking about what the trends are and what we need to learn and what are the caution, what we need to be careful about. But before we do that, I want to touch upon what really artificial intelligence is. It's important that you create the foundation. Um, Artificial intelligence is when we can simulate human intelligence, when machines can act and think like human, which means they can predict. They can understand the next word you're going to say. They can understand what your behavior is on how you buy, how you shop. It can tell you about your calendar and how to optimize your calendar. So, really acting like more, having an intelligence like human to be able to do human like task. So, what is artificial intelligence? It has subcategories. It is deep learning, it's machine learning, large language model, which are LLMs, generative AI, and so on. But also, there is a data science aspect which overlaps, which is the stats and the experimental design or scientific methods. And we've been using those for a while. But I think the large language models have truly created the aha moment for the world because they brought AI in the center and forefront of us. But we have to remember the whole conversation about should we pause the AI development? If you remember, as soon as the chat GPT came in 2023, there was a lot of conversation in the news about should we pause AI development because we don't know what the ethical, social, and the regulation should be around it. But when we talk about that, what are we really talking about? We're talking about different levels of artificial intelligence first. And I think that's important that we learn and understand what those are. When we talk about artificial intelligence, we are talking about a artificial narrow intelligence, really. Right now, the stage we are in, we are really working on machine learning, which is the narrow intelligence, where we have Siri, Alexa, which are learning from the behavior of the data that comes in, and they respond to that. That's machine learning. Where we're moving towards, we are progressing actively towards, is the AGI, artificial general intelligence, where now computers are becoming as intelligent as humans are. So we say we move from machine learning to machine intelligence. And the stage 3 is machine consciousness. That's the ASI, the super intelligence. When we predict that machines are going to become smarter than us, they're going to start having an understanding of our emotions, understanding of our consciousness. And that's the worry. What are the regulation and the boundaries when we get to the ASI, artificial super intelligence? I was at a conference the other day, and at the coffee table, I was getting my coffee, and I see these two young kids who were talking about AI, generative AI. And they were talking about the hallucination and how the AI is going to respond. And when I was telling them, I said it's really about, think about AI right now in a infancy stage. They're in a very early stage where they're like a little kid trying to learn from the behavior of the human. If you say to ChatGPT, please and thank you, it will respond to you accordingly because it's reinforcement. We are reinforcing our behavior when we are building these models. We give feedback. If you start cursing or you're saying something negative, it gives you back that in return. So it's really reinforcement of the behavior. So think about it always that at every level, we all are now responsible for how we behave and act with this technology. Um, and so let's look back a little bit in the history. I like taking the examples of companies who've done well and the companies we can relate to so we can really understand. And I love this example of Netflix. In my book, I actually talk about this example. I don't know how many of you are at that age where they can look back and remember the days of Blockbuster. We would go to the store, get our movie. I still remember getting excited about Friday nights because I would go to Blockbuster, get a movie, get popcorn, get candy, and make a movie night at home. And Netflix comes in and says, we are going to break the business model completely. We're actually going to mail you a DVD so you don't have to go to Blockbuster, and we will not charge any late fees. So think about it, changing the business model completely from consumer behavior. How does the consumer behave to now how they're going to behave? So they predicted that the consumer would actually appreciate not having late fees, having a queue, and be able to get their DVDs when they want, when and not worry about going every Friday to return the your movie. But so think about it. What did they do when they created a digital footprint? They started tracking what does the consumer wanted. They start tracking, is the consumer watching a certain type of movie, what day and time the consumer watches the movie, when do they stop and replay, or maybe watch a movie 2 or 3 times. And the benefit was that they understood their consumers so well, they could pivot and actually launch original series. They started creating the original content. That gave them a huge boost. They took such a leap forward, and Blockbuster went out of business. They couldn't keep up with Netflix. And the reason was what? Well, the reason was that they had the prediction engine, the model, we call the machine learning model, to learn to predict effectively, to understand what my consumer want. So really about making the engine powerful. I mean, it's a great case study. If you ever get a chance on it, you should read. There's so many great nuggets in it, from how they perfected their algorithm to predict. And they had a hackathon, created $1 million prize, had the best brains in the world work on their algorithm to perfect it. And they continued improving, really put their dollars on making sure their models, their AI machine learning was getting ahead of the game to be able to produce the best product they could. The examples goes on and on. Domino's, they say we are not a pizza company anymore. We are a technology company. We are a data company. Harrah's was a great case study because when casinos in Las Vegas were building beautiful malls and waterfalls, they put their energy and efforts and all their resources into understanding their consumer behavior to be able to restructure their machine, slot machine, so it was ease of use for their consumer to come play and leave, not worry about shopping or entertainment, really focus on what they wanted. And they went from $6 million loss to $115 million to $2 billion in revenue pretty quickly. And we're moving towards that. We can't run away from AI. And I want to urge all of you, and I see 57 people right now. I urge all of you to really watch this slide carefully, because AI is here to stay. We are investing as a global market. We're investing in artificial intelligence more and more. And if you see here, they're going to be a combination of hardware, services, and software. And by 2032, the market is going to be exponentially higher than what it is today. So there are going to be a lot of opportunities for all of you. And I always say that we live in the world of being a lifelong learner. We need to continue investing in our skills. We need to continue investing in our technology and in our functional area where we are working, to continuously grow our talent and our skills. And what a great time when we know there's a wealth of opportunities for us to really invest in. Remember, the question will be, are you a consumer or a creator of AI? Nobody, none of us are going to be not touching it. We all will be touching AI in some way or the other. Either we'll be consuming it or we'll be creating it. And I just, it's a silly example, but I think it's a really fun example to talk about the human and robot challenge. They did a challenge and they said, this is the task, read your company name in Excel file, create the order status, extract that information, put it into the database, and they gave the task to the man and a robot. And robotic automation, RPA is a great tool and can actually work on reducing errors and creating efficiencies. And when they did this test, it came out that the human had two typo errors, and did the task in 15 minutes and 5 seconds, and the robot did it in 16 seconds with no error. So clearly, we know about systems, we work with systems, and systems can create automation and efficiency. But now we're living in the world where we have the work is going to be done with part-time, full-time employee, crowdsourcing, gig workers, contract workers. It's going to be done at co-locations, remote workers, fluid schedules, and it'll be done by AI, robots, and automation. And another, a privilege I have is to be able to go to these conferences where I'm speaking, but also there are vendors, and I get to see a lot of really new upcoming technologies. And I saw this technology where, when you as a human, an employee of a team, but there's also a chatbot which is your peer. And so the demo was about this chatbot. You actually drag this the bot, who is in this example, in this demo, a recruiter, HR recruiter, and you give the recruiter or the bot a name. And let's say in this example it's Amy. And Amy, we assign a task and we say Amy can actually write job description, find resumes, candidates, schedule interviews. And so the bot goes out and pulls out the resumes, write the job description, matches it, schedule resumes. And it's all done by my coworker, who is a bot, who's an AI agent, who's somebody who goes out and actually is doing the work, and we call it Amy. But that's what the future is going to look like. You're going to have AI working with you on your team, and you're going to have these digital humans who are going to be on your team, will be working side by side with you and focusing on making sure that you are being more productive. Now, for a minute, it looked like I was in science fiction, but on the other side, I started feeling like, oh my God, I could have a team of these digital human who I don't have to worry about when do they leave? Are they falling sick? Are they taking vacation? Do they have their mood swings? I would have a digital human who'll actually get my work done. The work which I don't, mundane work, the manual work, could be getting done by these people, digital humans. So what skills would we need now? We are entering into this new era. What skills would be important for us? We all have heard about prompt engineering. What is prompt engineering? It is really truly an art of crafting clear, concise instruction. We always said, as program manager, project manager, business analyst, we've always been taught that ask good questions. It's not about the answers, it's about the questions. Do you know what questions you're asking? And it just gets more clearer that we are living in the world where we will have to ask good question. Instead of being too generic, be more specific, be more detail oriented, so you can get the right answer. So second skill, which is natural language processing, understanding the language of machines. When NLP is the core of truly understanding what people are saying and be able to respond. I spoke about chatbot, virtual assistant, AI agents. They're all going to be learning, hearing you in natural language, and then processing it to be able to communicate back with you in the language you understand. So try really understanding what language, how the NLP works, is going to become really critical. Also, you don't have to be technical anymore. I love this era. I remember I grew up, I'm a computer science engineer, as you heard before. I grew up in the age where I was programming. I programmed in Fortran, in COBOL, in Clients are Oracle, Visual. I don't even know if anyone uses Visual Basic, but I grew up coding, really getting on the computer and writing the code. But we're getting now into the world where there's low code or no code world. We have ChatGPT that can write a program. So it's not about writing the program or learning the hard. It's really about understanding, do we understand what the business strategy is? Do we understand where do we want to go? Do we have clear goals? Do we understand what problem are we solving? It's a beautiful world now because you can actually focus on the problem and not the mundane task of solving the problem. So the skill that would be required is, do you understand business strategy and do you know how to implement it? Do you understand what the opportunities are there for AI to be able to implement? Do you understand the potential risk? Because yes, there's a half glass full, but there's also a half glass empty. So it's not all rosy, it's not all bad. Creating the balance. Do you understand how do you build the roadmap and create a successful integration? So really important that you understand the business strategy and how you implement the business strategy. It's also about understanding data and understanding how can you use the numbers to understand where you're going. How do you collect the data? How do you analyze this data to train the model? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about training the models as we continue. And is the data getting collected appropriately? Is the data getting collected where you can trust where it's coming from? And is it telling you a powerful story? And then comes creative thinking. A lot about soft skills more than hard skill. It's not about the IQ anymore. It's about the EQ. IQ is important, but EQ is a lot more important. Understanding how can you be creative using AI? How can you generate new ideas using AI? How can you come up with solution and possibilities using AI? It becomes really, really critical. And let's talk a little bit about the trends. I spoke about the skills, but it's also important to understand what the trends are and which direction you should be going. So if you remember, when we are typing or predicting, it's one way. It's text. Then we start seeing, oh, we have AI, which can process the images or create charts. But multimodal AI models are ones which combine it all. They listen to you, they look at the images, they look at the text, and they combine it all together to give you the answer. And as you see the evolution of GPT-4 and further, it's combining all different sources of input to give you a combined, fuller picture. So before it was siloed, now we are combining it all together. So the multimodal AI is the direction we are moving towards. We're also moving towards AI agents. They're not reactive. They're not waiting for you to give direction. They're becoming proactive. They're trying to figure out how to solve the problem. They said in 2023, it was the year to be able to chat with an AI. We were chatting with the AI, but 2024 is the year we'll be able to use these agents. Sorry about that. Uh, to agents get stuff done for you, make reservations or plan your trip or other services. AI agents are going to become more powerful and more strong and more popular. And then open source AI. So we'll be able to use other people's work and continue working on top of it. GitHub is a great example, but really open source AI where you can use other people's model to continue working on what you have to develop. So really sharing information and continue building on top of other people's work. And then the trend is also about the retrieval augmented generation. It's called RAG. RAG is a technique when you're reducing hallucination. So really taking the data, unstructured information from, so the model gets trained on your large language model or the data that's fed into it. But really think about gathering unstructured information, bringing it in to continue fine tuning and make sure that the hallucination, the errors are reducing those errors. And then, of course, the ethics and security is really important. Deepfakes and sophisticated AI-generated content is not comforting. It is something which really is hurting the reputation. Lots of people are concerned about what it can do, the negative impact it can have. And that's why the AI ethics and security becomes so critical. And I think having those departments and divisions become critical to have. And that's where I want to put a little cause. I want to caution and I want to say, you know, it is great that we live in the world which is lots of opportunities. I spoke about um, for people, listeners who are listening, you get the right skills, learn about the trends, and see the kind of value it gives you. But it's really important that we are cautious. Why we are cautious? Because the data, if you Google on Google and you say housekeeper, most of the pictures that's going to come up would be women. But when you Google leaders or, you know, most of the pictures that comes up is of men. The data is data that we are feeding into a model. The model enhances the biases. And why is that worrisome? It's worrisome because if you give the data to the model and it processes the data, and listen, the data is coming from the world. So we do live in a world which has a bias ingrained into our data. Data takes that bias and is designing the model and applications, but enhancing those biases. It becomes so critical as a creator of these models that we're cautious and use the best practices. You know, I want to talk about. I want to just see if I have. I want to talk about an example which I think is really worrisome. That when you have a set of data in a zip code and you have the cops going out, and this is a real example where the model looks at a data set of a certain zip code and you have maximum alert on that zip code. And now, just because the data says that in the past you've had certain types of criminal activity, it gives you a high alert on that kind of activities. There's another example where the historical data says that most of the engineers are men, so women are not successful in engineering field because you don't see them. When a large technology firm deployed this HR model, all the women resumes got rejected because in historically they saw that men performed well in the job because they were that's what they see. The model automatically rejects female resumes. Of course, they abandoned the HR model. Large financial services, same thing. They went and saw that managing directors were a certain type from a certain Ivy League schools. So all the female resumes automatically got removed from the screening data set. So biases can truly harm the system, harm the environment. So it's critical that we think about what is the ethical and legal implication of this data set. Regulation, privacy, how do we mitigate the bias? How can we be transparent about what policies we are using as we are looking at this data? Is it relevance, governance, confidentiality, liability? Is it accurate, and can we truly make the decision on this database? So really getting and thinking about legal and ethical responsibility. Listen, a lot of companies don't have that. A lot of organizations don't have specific AI ethics or AI regulation groups. So it becomes important that the division that's working with that data thinks about what the best practices are. There's a great study that World Economic Forum did in 2022, and they shared the inclusive AI lifecycle and spoke about how do you identify a use case or a problem? How do you build a model and design a model? And how do you collect the data? How do you deploy the model, test and monitor it? Is important. And I'm just going to give you one piece of that study. And of course, feel free to send me an email or send me a message on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share this white paper with you. And in this use case, they talk about that when you're building a use case, think about inclusive design. Think about, are you using the right sources? Think about your team. Do you have the diverse team and diverse opinions? Think about where and what data access are you what data sources you're accessing. Is the problem defined from multiple perspective? Do you have the basic education and literacy on AI? So really thinking about all aspect of being fair, because that's how the model becomes fair. And as I said earlier, it is truly the human and AI needs to coexist. We live in that world, but we need to really use this AI as a child who's learning from us. It's the child who's going to behave in a direction that we provide the feedback to. We can't run away from it, clearly. We cannot. Each one of us has to figure out how we're going to engage with the AI, how we're going to learn, invest in ourselves to learn more about the technology and what skills are required, and how do we emerge from this to the next level with the right technology and right skills. Listen, I was writing the book during the pandemic. And my whole realization was, oh my God, if we don't do something about it now, we are all writing history. Each one of us who's working with data analytics in any shape, as a consumer, as a business leader, or as a creator, we are creating history. We are building, we're teaching these models how to act. So it becomes really important that we become, the data comes from the real world. We do the right thing to train the data, collect the data for it to do the right thing. And that's where I started Women Leaders in Data and AI, because I realized that if we don't have women and diversity on the leadership role, we will have a challenging situation at our hand. We will be creating and leaving the world in 30, 40, 50 years. When we are gone, we will have a world which we created, and we own that responsibility of making sure that we leave the world a better place when we are gone. And we are all technology leaders. I don't care what title you own or what position you own. Each one of us is a technology leader in this day and age, and it becomes really essential that we become more responsible in how we engage. This is my LinkedIn. You can take a QR code and connect with me. And please send me any information, any questions you may have. If we can't answer the questions here, I'm happy to answer the questions later. And I'm happy to take questions. Ashley, I can stop sharing, open for a discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was a spectacular presentation, very informative, and I enjoyed how you've taken these complex subjects and simplified them. I really really enjoyed it. So we can start, as you said, as with the questions in the chat. So far, we have one from Richard Beeson, and the question is: given your example of removal of all female candidate resumes, have you seen HR integrations with, quote, the predictive index?
Yeah, I've used predictive index before, and it's a great tool. If you haven't used it, it's a good tool because it gives you a lot of different aspects and elements of human features. I would say, what is your personality type? What is your so I do like Richard. I do like predict tools like predictive index who can give you personality profiling to help you understand. But the problem when organizations use AI model is that it's getting the data of millions of resumes, and it's filtering those resumes, and that's when it becomes challenging, because when the model rejects the resumes even before it comes up to a place where companies are using predictive index to profile and screen or shortlist the candidates. But you're right, tools like predictive index are good and are positive because they actually can profile on behavior, not on gender. And those are the right tools, right? um, Michael Lewis asked, how do you keep the hatred from influencing and emerging AI capabilities? And Michael, this is such a good question because it truly is what you make of it, right? The world, your life and your world and your technology is what you make of it. um, we can have a debate about, is science good for you in mankind or not, right? So chemical weapons can hurt, but same time chemical used in medicine can help. You know, uh, biological weapons can hurt, but biological elements can help solve cancer problems, or any kind of diseases. So you're absolutely right. And that's why I said it is so important that we, each one of us, take the responsibility of acting and reacting. These models are learning from our behavior. And thank you, Michael, for asking the question, because it is such a critical question. And the models are going to react exactly how we behave. I don't know if you saw, Michael, or know about this story about um, Microsoft launched a Twitter chatbot in 2016, and it was a teenage girl. I don't know if any one of you know about that teenage girl on Twitter, and it was a chatbot, and it was going to respond to the behavior, the social commentary on Twitter, and she immediately became bitter and started cursing Mexicans. If you remember, it was the time of election, and there was a lot of heightened emotions. And she very quickly became um, bitter and angry, and within 40 less than 48 hours, Microsoft had to bring her down because of that hatred AI showed. And there is a lot of work getting done to make sure that that doesn't happen. And that's why when I said it's our responsibility how we engage, chatbot becomes angry. I mean, the whole situation where chatbots started hallucinating because people kept probing the negative comments in chatbot, in chat GPT, and then it just gets confused and goes on a tangent. So it's really important that we don't take it lightly and be responsible. Heather says, have studies been done how AI will affect our economy? AI takes over the administrative and predictive roles of many employees. In fact, Heather, I'm so fascinated about AI and economics, the global economy, how especially digital human are going to create impact. I'm personally doing a whole research with NGIT right now on that particular topic, because it is going to. The answer is yes, Heather. It is going to affect our economy, and administrative roles definitely are going to be affected. The question is, can we as human race evolve and be more creative and evolve to the next level to be able to learn and become solve bigger problems? We start putting our focus and build our kids to be entrepreneurial. We need to invest in, I mean, I teach at Columbia University entrepreneurship, and I do truly believe that technologies like AI are going to give our kids more power to solve bigger and smaller problems, focus on being creative and be able to address issues. um, And Ryan, I'm sorry, Ashley, is that okay? I'm reading the questions from the
Oh, no,
chat.
that's fine. Yeah, I didn't want to cut you off. I can read them
Yeah,
if you want, unless you want. And yeah, I'll go ahead. This was is a lengthy one. So the from Ryan Sullivan, can you discuss the tension between AI accurate reflecting reality versus AI correcting reality due to a perceived inequity? For example, the majority of nurses are female and the majority of doctors are male. So I would assume that AI generated images would reflect that. Is that a problem that needs correcting? In other words, should reality be reflected or should an idealized version of reality be reflected? Clearly, resumes being rejected based on gender is unethical.
I love that question again. Listen, Ryan, I could have a really long conversation on this, because that's where, that's the whole reason I started this organization, Women Leaders in Data and AI. And I was scared. I said, I don't want to. I knew there was a problem. Exactly right, as you said. You and I could sit down and have this conversation about what is the right thing. Is it, how should AI really be responsible and reactive? But it's one thing, it's much easier to have a conversation than to actually do something about it. Because I used to say, I'm just one person, what can I do about it? I can only do my programming right, and my what I'm building right. That's all I can do. And I remember talking to my son, I said, I'm writing this book and I'm speaking at conferences, but what can I do? I mean, this is a problem, but what can I do? And I have to tell you, it's really sweet, because kids think their parents are superheroes, and they think that parents can solve everything. And so my son looks at me and he says, Mom, if you can't do, then who will? Because you should be able to do something about it. And I smiled and I just walked away. And a few days later, he said, Mom, are you going to do something about it? And then I said, okay, maybe I'll collect few women I know and get them together and see if we can create a change in corporate America and have more women at the leadership role. Because that's the problem, right? There are more nurses but not doctors. There are more secretaries but not managers. How do we change that? And listen, my Ryan, my effort is little small. I can only try. I started an organization. I'm trying to bring more women and men. So we changed the name to, I don't know if we changed the name on our website. We rebranded, we call it World Leaders Advancing Women Leaders, because we want men and women come together to create the change in the real data. If we don't change the reality around us, we can't change the model. We can try changing the models and change it so that it reflects what the you know um, projected right world should look like. But I think we all need to do the right things in our workplace. Ryan, for you to say, I want a female leader in my organization, or really having those actions right so the model can learn from it. So I think you're right. We can try to build model which idealistic scenarios, but I also think that we need to take responsibility within ourselves to do the right thing. And I meet so many guys who are just amazing fathers, and they'll come to me and they say, I my daughter is you know in Stanford and doing computer science, and I just wanted you to know that there's a lot more women who are coming in STEM. But the question is, are they advancing in the workplace? They can come to the STEM program, but you want to make sure they're continuing to progress in their career. So thank you for the question, Ryan. Really appreciate it.
Next question from Billy DeLuca. Given that AI is so good at picking up on human biases, can we leverage AI to identify cultural or organizational biases that are barriers to certain groups?
That's the effort, Billy. We are trying to train the model, saying that if you see this, do this. If you see heavy percentage of all men in this job, double check and check for this variance. So the engineers are trying to work, and their software is now coming out to detect bias. And so there are a lot more effort going on, because this is an issue. But no matter what you say, I think the reality does reflect in the model. So it's really important that in the real world we do the right thing, because these models are replicating that, and they're going to replicate that faster than you would know. So we don't want to build these models which are going to be biased. And that's why I keep saying, next 20, 30 years, while we are working in the workforce, let's do the right thing. You know, hopefully next 40 years, we are all here and we do the right thing. And when we are gone, the next generation benefits from our actions in the real world that reflects on the models.
Um, Next question, Heather Macero asks, you touched on it a little bit, but as AI emerges, how do we put parameters around ethical and fair ingest of learning? Are we focusing on the policy or law to ensure this technology isn't used nefariously? Understand we as parents have the responsibility to teach our children, but what about those that have intent to disrupt?
They're always going to be bad agents. The world is full of good and bad. That's the reality. Our effort is that we do the right thing. And hopefully, Heather, I do the right thing, you do the right thing. Hopefully we create the influence, and we become the role model to do the right thing. But you're right, it's not just you and me, right, Heather? It's about, do we have the right policies in place? Do we have the right checklist that we can pass on and say, look, let's make sure that we're doing the right thing. IEEE has published AI ethics papers. Our government has, there's a whole AI ethics and responsible AI framework that is published by U.S. government, by EU, by IEEE, and there's lots of organizations who've given the parameters. And even though it's not enforceable right now, the effort for me when I'm speaking, Heather, when you're speaking to somebody, it is important that we take those checklists and bring it to the forefront. And somebody said to me, in our organization, we don't have an AI ethics person or a group which is responsible. And I say, if things are not available, doesn't mean we don't do it. We still become responsible and make sure that we take that and and implement it. But those resources are available very openly on the internet. You can search it. Those frameworks, those best practices are available. There are organizations which actually are focusing on. There's responsible AI, which is an organization. There are ethical organizations which are focusing on it. There's a lot of material available for you to refer to as you build your AI models.
And I believe, let's see, I was just about to say, I believe that is the last question. Last call. If anyone else has any, you can drop it in the chat.
And I would say, as people are thinking about the question, I have a call to action for all of you who's listening. I think it's really important that each one of us learn about what's available. If it's ChatGPT or if it's Midjourney or if it's any tool, start trying to use that tool and engage with AI, because it's important that you learn how to engage with AI. Number two, I would say, is that become a lifelong learner and be curious. Figure out how you solve. When you have an issue and a challenge, it's good, because if you didn't have a challenge, how would you learn? So think about how you can start applying AI into a problem you're trying to solve. Number three, I would say, be a good citizen. And we say that, and listen, I say that, but you just have to be conscious about how you act around your peers, your team members, your people who are working for you, or people who are you working for. So really important that we become good citizen, because every data element is getting stored right now. It's funny, somebody said that your car probably knows more about you than you would think, you would know about yourself. So really important that you remember that data is getting collected everywhere, if you know it or not. Our behavior, our actions are getting recorded, and those actions will be replicated by our model. So just be more conscious, more aware, and let's build our kids, make sure our kids are more entrepreneurial, are curious, and doing the right thing.
Absolutely. And you've got a few kudos in the chat as well. Leslie Owen says she has quite a few nuggets to take forward or think about. And she also posted a quote from Albert Einstein: "If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask." For once,
Exactly.
absolutely. For once, I know the proper question. I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes.
What a beautiful quote. Exactly. Thank you, Leslie. I think, and that's, you would think, Ashley, this has been around for so long, right? And now we are saying prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is really asking the right question.
And then lastly, I see Heather Massaro says it's important that good learning is incorporated. Don't be afraid of it. Use it so it's accurate. And so, and I jotted down a few things too that stood out, which you repeated at the end. Like, we are all lifelong learners, and it's a good way you framed AI to treat it like a child. So how we bring this up and what we invest and input depends on what the outcome is. So tomorrow truly does depend on what we do today. So we are truly writing history.
And thank you for inviting me. And thank you for celebrating Women's History Month. And thank you for celebrating a woman in your life. I'm hoping that you go back to your work and find a woman and wish her a happy Women's History Month. I think these are little celebrations that makes life beautiful. And for the fact that your entire team, Ashley, I want to congratulate you, but your entire team and everybody who took time out for an hour to invest in themselves, I congratulate all of you. And please stay in touch. I love hearing success stories. Tell me what you're doing, and continue progressing. Thank you, Ashley, for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so very much for inspiring us. And thank you all for attending and joining March Innovation Connect. We are grateful for your continued support of DoD Innovators and the DAF CDAO. Speaking of support, we ask you that you register for the annual Department of the Air Force Data Analytics and Artificial Intelligence Forum taking place at the Hilton Sandestin Beach in Miramar Beach, Florida, April 8th through 11th. Registration will remain open until 29 March. This year's theme is Fusion in Flight, integrating data, analytics, and AI to drive a modern department of the Air Force. For your convenience, we've added the registration link in the chat. We have several pioneering projects underway and look forward to spotlighting each speaker. Our next webinar will host Mr. William Bill Stryland, the Chief Technology Officer for the DoD Chief Digital and AI Office, where he will overview the agile approach of the strategy to AI development and application. Approved videos of our past events are available on the Department of the Air Force CDAO YouTube page. As always, we welcome your recommendations for future Innovation Connect topics to our DAF CDAO communications mailbox. Thank you so much for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you next month.